This means war. The words echoed through the halls of Earth's governing council, sending ripples of tension across the galaxy. Admiral Dylan Foster's voice, steady and resolute, cut through the shocked silence that followed the devastating news of the Zarantine Empire's surprise attack on New Haven. Billions of human lives snuffed out in an instant. Earth's outermost colony reduced to rubble. The orbital defense platforms, once thought impregnable, now nothing more than space debris. The distress call from New Haven had arrived mere hours ago, carrying with it the weight of unimaginable loss and the spark of humanity's fury. As the emergency council meeting convened, the air crackled with a mix of fear and determination. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the extent of the destruction wrought by the technologically advanced Zarantine. Their energy weapons had torn through New Haven's defenses like paper, leaving nothing but scorched earth in their wake. Admiral Foster, a seasoned military tactician with decades of experience, stood before the council. His weathered face bore the lines of countless battles, but never had he faced a threat of this magnitude. He spoke of the Zarantine's earlier demands for Earth to surrender its territories and resources, demands that humanity had proudly refused. Now they faced the consequences of that defiance. The council members shifted uneasily in their seats as Foster proposed a bold counteroffensive strategy. Some argued for caution, fearing further escalation. Others called for immediate surrender, their voices tinged with desperation. But Foster's words cut through the debate like a plasma torch through hull plating. "We are humanity," he declared, his eyes blazing with conviction. "We have faced extinction before and emerged stronger. We have conquered our own world and reached for the stars. We will not bow to alien oppressors who seek to strip us of our hard-won colonies and resources." As Foster's impassioned speech continued, the mood in the council chamber began to shift. Fear gave way to resolve. Doubt transformed into determination. The Admiral's words painted a vision of humanity united, its incredible potential unleashed in the face of this existential threat. When the vote came, it was unanimous. Earth would go to war. Within hours, dormant wartime protocols sprang to life across the planet. Factories retooled for weapons production. Shipyards bustled with activity as the entire human fleet was mobilized. And deep within classified facilities, work accelerated on Operation Thunderclap, a weapon that promised to neutralize the Zarantine's seemingly invincible energy shields. As news of the conflict spread, the galaxy watched with growing unease. Species that had long dismissed humanity as a primitive, fractious race now saw a united front of terrifying resolve. Reports of Earth's massive military mobilization and rapid technological advancements reached the ears of Voller, the Zarantine Emperor. Initially dismissive, Voller's arrogance quickly turned to alarm as his spies relayed the true extent of humanity's preparations. The easy victory his military command had promised now seemed a distant dream. Instead, they faced the prospect of a long, costly war against an enemy whose determination seemed to grow with each passing moment. Across the galaxy, powers great and small began to choose sides. Some, impressed by humanity's defiance or fearing Zarantine expansion, offered their support to Earth. Others, seeking to curry favor with the supposedly superior Zarantine, pledged their allegiance to the Empire. As battle lines were drawn and alliances forged, one thing became clear. The conflict that was about to unfold would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. And at its heart stood humanity, outnumbered, outgunned, but burning with a fierce determination that made the stars themselves tremble. The Zarantine Empire had made a grave miscalculation. They had awakened a sleeping giant, unleashing the full fury and ingenuity of the human race. Now, as Earth's fleets assembled and its new weapons came online, the galaxy held its breath. The war that would decide the fate of humanity, and perhaps the entire galaxy, was about to begin. As the gears of war began to turn, Admiral Dylan Foster wasted no time implementing his strategic vision. The emergency council meeting had barely adjourned when he strode into Earth's central command, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of human-controlled space. Initiate Operation Safe Haven, he ordered, his voice carrying the weight of billions of lives. I want every vulnerable colony evacuated within the week. The command center erupted into a flurry of activity. Within hours, thousands of transport ships were dispatched across human space, escorted by the most formidable warships in Earth's fleet. The logistical nightmare of moving millions of civilians to fortified worlds deeper within Earth's territory began in earnest. On New Terra, one of the outer colonies, panic gripped the populace as evacuation orders came through. Sarah Chen, a school teacher, herded her students onto a massive transport ship, their wide eyes reflecting the fear and uncertainty of the moment. It's going to be okay, she reassured them, even as she glanced nervously at the sky, half expecting to see Zarantine warships descending upon them. As the evacuation proceeded, Foster turned his attention to Earth's long-dormant shipyards on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. With a series of encrypted commands, he activated these hidden facilities, unleashing a wave of industrial might that had lain dormant for generations. On the rust-red surface of Mars, massive hangar doors ground open for the first time in decades. Assembly lines hummed to life, churning out components for a new class of warship, the Thunderbolt-class destroyer. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, chief engineer of the Mars shipyard, marveled at the sleek design hovering before her in holographic form. The shield-piercing technology derived from Project Thunderclap, she murmured, running her hand through the projection. It's revolutionary. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, Foster dispatched Earth's top xenobiologist, Dr. Marcus Wright, to lead a delegation to the technologically advanced Zarquin Confederation. The journey was tense, with the human envoys acutely aware of the Zarantine fleets that now patrolled much of known space. As their ship docked at the Zarquin capital world, Dr. Wright steeled himself for the negotiations ahead. The Zarquin, with their iridescent scales and multifaceted eyes, regarded the human delegation with a mix of curiosity and wariness. "We come seeking an alliance," Wright began, his translator converting his words into the musical tones of the Zarquin language. "The Zarantine threat looms over us all." The negotiations stretched on for days, a delicate dance of proposals and counteroffers. Finally, an agreement was reached. In exchange for human assistance in liberating occupied Zarquin worlds, the Confederation would share their shield-disrupting technology. As Wright's team celebrated this diplomatic victory, news reached them of a Zarantine attack on the human colony of New Arcadia. The delegation watched in tense silence as reports came in, detailing an unexpected turn of events. Captain Sarah Wright, Marcus's daughter and commander of the experimental cruiser UES Defiant, had employed daring guerrilla tactics to ambush the Zarantine fleet. Her ship darted between asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres, striking at weak points in the enemy formation. "That's my girl," Marcus whispered, a mixture of pride and fear in his voice as he watched grainy footage of the Defiant weaving through explosions. The victory at New Arcadia, while small, sent ripples through human space. It proved that the Zarantine were not invincible, that human ingenuity could triumph against superior technology. Back on Earth, Foster oversaw the implementation of a planet-wide defense grid. Thousands of orbital platforms took shape in the skies above humanity's homeworld, jam-packed with energy weapons and missile arrays. In a classified facility deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Foster initiated another secret program. Project Sentinel, he told the assembled team of Earth's brightest AI researchers and combat strategists. "We need drones that can outthink and outmaneuver Zarantine fighters." As Earth fortified its defenses, Commander Jack Harper led a series of daring raids on Zarantine supply lines. His squadron, utilizing cutting-edge stealth technology, struck like ghosts in the night. Fuel depots erupted in silent explosions across the void of space. Ammunition stores detonated, leaving Zarantine outposts vulnerable. After one particularly successful mission, Harper's second-in-command, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, approached him on the bridge of their stealth frigate. "The Zarantine are adapting," she warned, showing him data on enemy patrol patterns. "They're learning our tactics." Harper nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to get more creative." As news of these human successes spread across the galaxy, other races began to take notice. The Voltar hegemony, known for its neutrality in galactic affairs, dispatched observers to human space. Grocknar, a Voltar diplomat, found himself stunned by what he witnessed. In a secure transmission back to his superiors, he reported, "The humans display a level of adaptability and innovation unlike anything we've seen. Their response to the Zarantine threat defies all predictions." The Voltar reports sent shockwaves through galactic political circles. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive now reassessed their stance. Some began to quietly reach out to Earth, testing the waters for potential alliances. Empress Zarkara of the Zarquin Confederation, her crystalline form shimmering with hardly restrained energy, personally contacted Admiral Foster. Her multifaceted eyes regarded him with a mixture of respect and calculation. "Admiral," she began, her translator conveying the musical quality of her native tongue. "Your people have proven themselves worthy allies. I propose a joint operation against the Zarantine stronghold in the Nexus system." Foster leaned forward, studying the tactical display between them. "The Nexus system," he mused. "That's the linchpin of their supply network in this sector." Zarkara's form flickered as she nodded. "Precisely. With your unconventional tactics and our technology, we could deal a crippling blow to the Zarantine war machine." As Foster considered the proposal, alarms blared throughout Earth's command center. A junior officer rushed to his side, face pale. "Sir," the officer reported, "long-range sensors have detected a massive Zarantine fleet on approach. It's larger than anything we've encountered before." Foster's expression resolute as he processed this new threat. The joint operation with the Tsar Queen could turn the tide of the war, but this incoming Zarantine armada threatened to undo everything they had accomplished. He turned back to the holographic image of Empress Zarkara, his mind racing through possibilities and contingencies. The next few decisions would shape the course of the war, and perhaps the fate of humanity and all alien species itself. Foster's gaze darted between the holographic image of Empress Zarkara and the tactical display showing the approaching Zarantine armada. He made his decision in an instant. "Empress, we accept your proposal, but first we have a more pressing matter to attend to." He quickly outlined the situation, and Zarkara's multifaceted eyes flickered with understanding. "We will divert forces to assist you, Admiral. This threat concerns us all." Foster nodded gratefully and turned to his command staff. "Initiate Operation Aegis, all ships to battle stations." The next hours were a blur of activity as Earth's defenses sprang to life. The orbital defense grid hummed with energy, its weapon systems tracking the incoming Zarantine fleet. On the surface, citizens huddled in shelters, their eyes glued to news feeds. Aboard the UES Titan, Foster stood on the bridge, his face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. "All ships form up, prepare to engage." The space around Earth soon erupted in a dazzling light show of weapons fire and explosions. Zarantine ships, sleek and predatory, clashed with the bulkier but formidable human vessels. Streams of fighter craft and drones swarmed between the capital ships, their dogfights leaving trails of debris in their wake. Foster watched as the newly minted Thunderbolt-class destroyers proved their worth. Their experimental shield-piercing technology tore through Zarantine defenses, leaving the alien ships vulnerable to follow-up strikes. "Admiral," a young officer called out, "the Zarquin reinforcements have arrived." Foster allowed himself a small smile as he saw the crystalline forms of Zarquin battle cruisers emerging from hyperspace, their weapons already blazing. The tide of battle began to shift. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Commander Jack Harper's stealth squadron approached the Zarantine stronghold of Krell Thor. His ship, the Shadow Dancer, led a mixed group of human and Zarquin vessels, all employing the latest in stealth technology. "All ships maintain radio silence," Harper sub-vocalized through his neural link. "Prepare to deploy Thunderclap on my mark." As they neared the planet, the massive Zarantine defense platforms came into view. Harper held his breath, watching the sensor readouts. They remained undetected. "Now," A series of sleek missile-like devices shot out from the stealth ships, streaking towards the planet below. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a wave rippling across water, the planet's energy shields flickered and died. Harper allowed himself a grim smile. Phase 1 complete. All ships, break stealth and engage. Give 'em hell. Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the Mars shipyards as the new Excalibur-class carriers took shape. The massive vessels dwarfed everything around them, their hangar bays capable of launching hundreds of fighters and drones. "Dr. Rodriguez," a voice called out. She turned to see her assistant wide-eyed with excitement. "We've just received word. The first wave of Excaliburs has reached the front lines. They're turning the tide at Terra Nova." Elena nodded, allowing herself a moment of pride before refocusing on the task at hand. "Good. Now let's make sure the next wave is even better." On the Zarquin homeworld, Dr. Marcus Wright hunched over a console, his eyes bloodshot from hours of non-stop work. Beside him, a Zarquin scientist named Zilra manipulated a holographic model of Zarentine DNA. "There," Marcus exclaimed, pointing at a specific sequence. "That's the key. Their cellular structure is hypersensitive to this specific EM frequency." Zilra's crystalline form shimmered with excitement. "Extraordinary. With this knowledge, we could develop non-lethal weapons to incapacitate Zarentine forces." Marcus nodded, already reaching for his communicator to relay the information to Admiral Foster. In a secure conference room on Earth, diplomats listened intently as a holographic figure spoke. The alien's features were obscured, but its voice was clear. "I am Subcommander Vexilor," it said. "I represent a growing faction within the Zarentine Empire who believe this war is unjust. We offer our assistance in exchange for sanctuary." The human diplomats exchanged glances. This could be the break they needed, or a clever trap. "We will need proof of your sincerity," one of them said cautiously. Vexilor nodded. "Of course. I am prepared to provide detailed information on our fleet movements in the Orion sector." As the negotiations continued, the war raged on across multiple fronts. The colony of Terra Nova found itself under siege as Admiral Krellax threw wave after wave of Zarentine ships against its defenses. Governor Maria Chen stood in the colony's command center, her face grim as she watched the battle unfold in the skies above. "Status report," she demanded. "Our shields are holding at 60%, Governor," an officer replied. "The new defense grid is performing above expectations, but we can't hold out forever." Chen nodded, her mind racing through options. "What's the status of the civilian evacuation?" 80% complete. We need more time." Just then, a new alert sounded. Chen looked up to see a massive hyperspace window opening. Her heart sank, expecting more Zarentine reinforcements. Instead, she saw the gleaming hulls of the new Excalibur carriers. "This is Captain Yuki Tanaka of the UES Excalibur." A voice crackled over the comms. "Terra Nova, help has arrived." The space around Terra Nova erupted in renewed battle as swarms of fighters and drones poured from the Excalibur's launch bays, turning the tide against the Zarentine forces. In the heart of Zarentine space, Emperor Volar raged at his subordinates. "How?" he roared. "How are these primitives defeating our superior forces?" A nervous officer stepped forward. "Your Excellency, we've detected unusual activity in the Nemesis system. It appears they're constructing some kind of superweapon." Volar's eyes narrowed. "Accelerate the project. We will show these humans the true meaning of power." Unbeknownst to Volar, this information was already being relayed to Earth through Vexilor's network. As Admiral Foster received the report, he knew they were entering a new and dangerous phase of the war. He turned to his staff, his expression resolute. "Contact the Zarquin. It's time to plan our strike on the Nemesis system. We cannot allow this superweapon to be completed." As preparations for this critical mission began, Foster couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come, and how far they still had to go. The battle for Earth had been won, but the war was expanding, drawing in more races and spreading to new fronts across the galaxy. He looked out at the stars, each one potentially harboring friends or foes, resources or dangers. Humanity had been thrust onto a galactic stage, fighting not just for survival, but for its place among the stars. The challenges ahead were immense, but Foster felt a sense of cautious optimism. They had faced the Zarantines' best and survived. Now it was time to take the fight to the enemy. Enemy. Foster's mind raced with possibilities as he processed the information from Vexler's network. The Zarantine superweapon project in the Nemesis system posed an existential threat that demanded immediate action. Dr. Wright, Foster called over the secure channel. I need an update on your research. Anything we can use against the Zarantine? Marcus's tired face appeared on the screen. Admiral, we've made a breakthrough. The Zarantine cellular structure is hypersensitive to a specific electromagnetic frequency. We're working on weaponizing it now. Foster's eyes lit up. This could be the game changer they needed. Excellent work, Doctor. How soon can we implement this? We're already retrofitting the Thunderbolt-class destroyers with EM emitters. Give us 48 hours and we'll have a working prototype. Make it 24, Foster ordered. We're initiating Operation Achilles' Heel. Over the next day, Earth's shipyards worked at a feverish pace. Engineers and technicians swarmed over warships, installing the new EM weapon systems. At Terra Nova, the colony's defenders prepared for the ultimate test of the new technology. Governor Maria Chen stood in the command center, watching as the Zarantine ships continued their relentless assault. Status on the new defenses? She asked. EM emitters are online and charged, her tactical officer reported, awaiting your command. Chen took a deep breath. Activate the emitters. Let's see what they can do. A low hum filled the air as the electromagnetic weapons powered up. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, chaos erupted among the Zarantine forces. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Krellax clutched his head in agony. What is happening? He gasped, struggling to maintain his balance. All around him, Zarantine crew members writhed in pain and confusion. Ships began to veer off course, their pilots incapacitated by the invisible assault on their physiology. Seizing the moment, Captain Sarah Wright's voice crackled over the comms. All ships, this is Captain Wright. The enemy is vulnerable. Launch counterattack now. A fleet of Thunderbolt-class destroyers surged forward, their weapons blazing. The disoriented Zarantine forces stood little chance against the coordinated human assault. Within hours, the siege of Terra Nova was broken, the Zarantine fleet scattered and in full retreat. As news of the victory spread, Admiral Foster wasted no time in capitalizing on the momentum. Prepare a strike team, he ordered. We're going after their superweapon. Commander Jack Harper stepped forward, his face set with perseverance. I volunteer to lead the mission, sir. Foster nodded. I thought you might. Take our best operatives and a contingent of Zarquin specialists. You leave in 6 hours. While Harper assembled his team, Foster met with Subcommander Vexler to go over the intelligence on the Nova Eradicator facility. The holographic image of the defector Zarantine flickered as he pointed out key vulnerabilities in the base's defenses. Security will be heaviest here and here, Vexler indicated, but there's a maintenance tunnel that leads directly to the main reactor core. It's lightly guarded as few know of its existence. Harper memorized every detail, knowing their lives would depend on this information. As his team boarded the stealth ship Shadow Dancer, he addressed them one final time. What we do today may well decide the fate of Earth and every other free world in this galaxy. We go in quiet, we hit them hard, and we don't stop until that weapon is dust. Any questions? Silence met his words. Each member of the team understood the gravity of their mission. The journey to the Zarantine core worlds was tense, punctuated by moments of nail-biting close calls as they navigated through enemy territory. Finally, they approached the heavily fortified planet where the Nova Eradicator was under development. Using every scrap of stealth technology at their disposal, Harper's team infiltrated the research facility. They moved like ghosts through dimly lit corridors, planting explosives at key structural points. Just as they reached the main reactor core, alarms blared throughout the complex. "We've been made," Harper growled. "Double time, people. Let's finish this and get out." As the team raced to plant the final charges, Zarantine security forces poured into the chamber. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as Harper's operatives returned fire, desperately trying to buy time. In his palace on the Zarantine capital world, Emperor Volar received word of the human incursion. His eyes blazed with fury. "Activate the Nova Eradicator," he commanded. "Now!" Back in the facility, Harper heard the ominous hum of the superweapon powering up. He knew they were out of time. With a heavy heart, he reached for the detonator. "It's been an honor," he said to his team. Then he pressed the button. The explosion rocked the entire planet. The Nova Eradicator, along with a significant portion of the research complex, vanished in a blinding flash of light and energy. On Earth, Admiral Foster received the news with a mixture of triumph and sorrow. The superweapon had been destroyed, but at a terrible cost. He allowed himself a moment of silence for Harper and his brave team, before turning his attention to the next phase of the war. The destruction of the Nova Eradicator sent shockwaves through the galactic community. The Voltar hegemony, impressed by humanity's sacrifice, finalized their alliance with Earth. Their gravitational technology soon found its way into human ships and defense systems, further tipping the scales of the conflict. In the following weeks, Foster oversaw the rapid expansion of Project Sentinel. Massive drone ships, guided by state-of-the-art AI, began to take shape in Earth's orbital shipyards. These unmanned behemoths would serve as the tip of the spear in humanity's push against the Zarantine Empire. As preparations for a major offensive ramped up, Foster couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. The war had brought out the best and worst in humanity, forging unlikely alliances and pushing the boundaries of what they thought possible. He stood at the window of his office, gazing out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zarantine were regrouping, planning their next move. But for the first time since the war began, Foster allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. They had a fighting chance now, and he intended to make the most of it. The Admiral turned back to his desk, where plans for the upcoming offensive awaited his attention. The next phase of the war was about to begin, and humanity was ready to take the fight to the enemy's doorstep. Admiral Foster's eyes scanned the holographic display, a sea of blinking lights representing the vast armada assembled for Operation Starfall. Earth's sleek warships mingled with the organic curves of Zarquin vessels and the crystalline structures of Voltar craft. It was a sight that would have been unimaginable just months ago. "All ships report ready, sir," his XO announced. Foster nodded, his voice steady as he gave the command that would reshape the galaxy. "Initiate Operation Starfall." Across multiple star systems, artificial wormholes blossomed into existence, their swirling vortices a testament to the Voltar's gravitational mastery. Earth's fleet surged forward, emerging from the spatial distortions with pinpoint accuracy. On the Zarantine frontier world of Nexthor, Admiral Krellax stared in disbelief as proximity alarms blared. "Impossible," he muttered, watching as hundreds of enemy ships materialized in his system. "Sound General Quarters. All ships, Battle Formation Alpha." But the Zarantine response was sluggish, their forces still reeling from recent defeats. Before they could mount an effective defense, waves of Earth's new AI-controlled warships from Project Sentinel streaked towards their positions. The unmanned vessels moved with inhuman precision, executing maneuvers that would have killed organic crews. They danced between plasma bolts, returning fire with devastating accuracy. Krellax watched in horror as his orbital defense platforms were systematically destroyed. "My lord," a trembling officer approached Emperor Volar's throne. "We've lost contact with the Nexthor system, and we're receiving reports of simultaneous attacks in the Zarketh and Vexillar sectors." Volar's eyes blazed with fury. "Impossible! How could they strike at 3 systems at once?" He rose, towering over the cowering officer. "Find me Krellax. He will answer for this failure." But Krellax was light years away, desperately trying to salvage what he could from the Nexthor debacle. His flagship rocked as another volley of human torpedoes found their mark. "Helm, get us out of here," he roared. "We must regroup at—" His words were cut short as a piercing whine filled the bridge. Krellax clutched his head, feeling as if his very cells were vibrating. Around him, his crew collapsed, unconscious. On the bridge of the UES Thunderchild, Dr. Marcus Wright allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. "EM weapon successfully deployed, Captain," he reported. "Zarantine flagship is disabled." Captain Sarah Wright nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Excellent work, Doctor. All teams prepare for boarding action. Remember, we want prisoners, not corpses." As Earth forces secured their victories, the ripple effects spread across the Zarantine Empire. On the mining world of Kazvor, centuries of resentment finally boiled over. Axivor, a Kazavorian resistance leader, stood before a crowd of his people, his voice carrying across the windswept plains. "For too long we have toiled under the Zarantine whip, but no more. Our oppressors are weakened, and the humans have shown us that they can be defeated." A roar went up from the crowd as they surged towards the Zarantine Administrative Center. Hidden among them, a team of human and Zarquin operatives provided tactical support, ensuring the rebellion's success. Similar scenes played out across a dozen worlds as Operation Starfall gained momentum. Foster watched the reports flood in, each one a nail in the Zarantine Empire's coffin. But victory came at a cost. On the agricultural world of Nyx, Zarantine forces implemented their scorched earth policy with ruthless efficiency. Fields of vital crops burned, and vital infrastructure crumbled under sustained bombardment. Captain Sarah Wright's humanitarian task force arrived to find a planet in chaos. Smoke filled the air as refugees streamed towards the landing zones, carrying what little they could salvage. "Get those medical tents set up now," Sarah barked, helping a limping alien child toward safety. "I want supply distribution centers established in all major population centers within the hour." As her teams worked tirelessly to save lives and restore order, Sarah couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and sorrow. They were winning, yes, but at what cost? Back on his flagship, Foster received a priority communication from Earth's intelligence services. The holographic figure of Vexilor materialized before him, the Zarantine defector's features tense with urgency. "Admiral, we've uncovered something disturbing," Vexilor began. "There's a hidden facility deep within the Zarantine home system. Our sources indicate it houses a weapon of unimaginable power." Foster's eyes narrowed. "Another superweapon, like the Nova Eradicator?" Vexilor shook his head. "Worse. We don't have details, but it seems to be Emperor Volar's failsafe. If activated, it could turn the tide of the war in an instant." The Admiral's mind raced, considering the implications. They'd come so far, pushed the Zarantine to the brink. He couldn't let this new threat undo everything they'd accomplished. "We need to take it out," Foster declared, "but a direct assault on their home system, it would be a bloodbath." He turned to his tactical officer. "Assemble a strike team. We'll need our best operatives for this one, and contact the Tsar Queen. We'll need their stealth technology if we have any hope of pulling this off." As preparations for the high-risk mission began, Foster couldn't shake a feeling of unease. They were pushing into the heart of enemy territory, gambling everything on one decisive strike. The success or failure of this operation would determine not just the outcome of the war, but the fate of countless civilizations across the galaxy. He looked out at the stars, each one a potential battlefield, a world to be won or lost. The next phase of Operation Starfall was about to begin, and the stakes had never been higher. Admiral Foster's eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic display of the Zarantine home system. The swirling mass of data points and tactical overlays represented their greatest challenge yet, and potentially their last chance to end this war decisively. "Stellar Shroud," he muttered, the name leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. Intelligence reports had confirmed the existence of this superweapon, capable of creating an impenetrable energy field around entire star systems. If activated, it could isolate Zarantine worlds from the Coalition's attacks, prolonging the war indefinitely. Foster turned to his assembled command staff. Ladies and gentlemen, we're initiating Operation Phantom Strike. Captain Sarah Wright will lead the assault. The holographic display shifted, zooming in on a sleek vessel, unlike anything in Earth's previous arsenal. Its hull seemed to shimmer and bend light around it, the product of reverse-engineered Zarquin stealth technology. The UES Shadowblade, Foster continued, our most advanced stealth carrier. It will serve as the linchpin for this operation. He outlined the daring plan, utilizing Voltar gravitational technology to create a series of micro-wormholes, allowing small strike teams to infiltrate key Zarantine defenses simultaneously. It was audacious, borderline insane, but it was their best shot at neutralizing the stellar shroud before it could be activated. As the briefing concluded, Dr. Marcus Wright approached Foster, his face etched with concern. Admiral, there's a complication we need to discuss. In his lab aboard the flagship, Dr. Wright brought up a series of genetic scans. We've detected anomalies in recent Zarantine tissue samples, he explained. Prolonged exposure to our EM weapons is causing unforeseen mutations in their population. Foster's brow furrowed. What kind of mutations? They're developing immunity to the weapon's effects, Wright said grimly. If this information reaches their high command, we could lose our tactical advantage. The Admiral absorbed this news, his mind racing. How long until you can develop a countermeasure? Wright shook his head. It's impossible to say. We're working around the clock, but... I work faster, Foster interrupted. We're out of time. Meanwhile, light years away on the Zarantine homeworld, Emperor Volar paced his war room like a caged predator. Holograms flickered around him, displaying the steady encroachment of coalition forces across his once vast empire. Activate the stellar shroud, he snarled at his chief scientist. Now! The scientist fidgeted nervously. But my lord, the device is untested. The potential for catastrophic failure? Valar's hand shot out, gripping the scientist's throat. The only catastrophe I see is our impending defeat. Activate it, or I'll find someone who will. As the scientist scurried away, Admiral Krellax watched from the shadows, his mandibles clicking in agitation. This was madness. The Emperor's paranoia would doom them all. With a heavy heart, Krellax made his decision. He retreated to his private quarters and activated a heavily encrypted communication channel. The scarred face of Vexilor, the Zarantine defector, materialized before him. I need to speak with Admiral Foster, Krellax said without preamble. I have information about the Stellar Shroud's weaknesses. In exchange, I want guarantees of fair treatment for our civilians and military personnel who wish to surrender. Vexilor's eyes widened, but he nodded. I'll arrange it immediately. Aboard the UES Shadowblade, Captain Sarah Wright stood on the bridge, overseeing final preparations for Operation Phantom Strike. The ship hummed with hardly restrained energy as strike teams performed last-minute equipment checks. All teams report ready, Captain, her XO announced. Sarah nodded, her voice steady as she gave the command. Initiate distraction assault. Phantom teams, prepare for wormhole insertion on my mark. Across the Zarantine home system, chaos erupted as the Coalition's main fleet engaged the outer defenses. Warships clashed in a dazzling display of destructive firepower, filling space with actinic flashes and expanding clouds of debris. In the midst of this maelstrom, the Shadowblade glided silently, undetected. Sarah watched as swirling vortices of energy blossomed before her ship, the micro-wormholes that would deliver her strike teams behind enemy lines. Phantom teams, execute, she ordered. Dozens of sleek assault craft surged forward, diving into the wormholes. They emerged deep within Zarantine territory, their stealth systems allowing them to approach key military installations undetected. Sarah watched the tactical display as her teams began their work. Communication arrays winked out of existence. Weapon emplacements fell silent. The carefully coordinated strikes sowed confusion and disarray among the Zarantine defenders. Meanwhile, a separate team led by Dr. Aidan Kovach infiltrated the Stellar Shroud facility. Using the intelligence provided by Krellax, they bypassed security systems and reached the heart of the complex. Kovacs whistled as he beheld the massive device. "It's incredible," he murmured, studying the intricate energy conduits and pulsing power core. "Terrible, but incredible." His admiration was short-lived as alarms began to blare throughout the facility. "They're activating it," one of his team members shouted. Kovacs raced to a control panel, his fingers flying over the alien interface. His eyes widened as he deciphered the readings. "This is bad," he said. "The power source is tied directly to the planet's core. We can't shut it down without potentially destroying the entire world." Before they could formulate a new plan, the facility shuddered violently. The stellar shroud's massive emitters pulsed with blinding energy as Emperor Volar, in his desperation, triggered a premature activation. A colossal energy field began to expand outward from the planet, enveloping the entire system. But something was wrong. The field fluctuated wildly, its unstable matrix threatening to collapse at any moment. Kovacs' mind raced as he analyzed the data streaming across his displays. "If that field collapses, the energy release will wipe out everything in this system," he realized aloud. His team looked to him, fear and perseverance warring in their eyes. Kovacs took a deep breath, forcing his panic aside as he focused on the problem before him. "We can't shut it down," he said, "but maybe we can contain it. If we reconfigure the energy matrix, we might be able to create a localized subspace bubble that will contain the implosion." As Kovacs and his team worked feverishly to modify the stellar shroud, Captain Wright's forces engaged in a desperate battle to defend the facility. Zarantine troops, realizing the danger, launched an all-out assault to stop the human interlopers. Sarah coordinated her teams with ruthless efficiency, directing fire and plugging gaps in their defenses. "Hold the line," she shouted over the comm. "Whatever's happening in there, Kovacs needs more time." Inside the facility, Kovacs felt sweat beading on his forehead as he raced against time. The energy field had reached critical levels, its containment system screaming in protest. "Now or never," he muttered, inputting the final command sequence. The modified stellar shroud activated with a sound like reality itself tearing apart. The massive energy field imploded, collapsing inward into a shimmering subspace bubble. The Zarantine homeworld shuddered but remained intact as the destructive energy was safely contained. In the aftermath, Sarah stared at her tactical display in disbelief. A significant portion of the Zarantine home system was now obscured by gravitational distortions, uninhabitable but intact. As reports of the stellar shroud's implosion spread, the Zarantine military command structure began to crumble. Admiral Krellax, seizing his moment, launched a lightning-fast coup against Emperor Volar. Aboard his flagship, Admiral Foster received the transmission he'd been waiting for. Krellax's face appeared on the main view screen, his expression a mixture of weariness and drive. "Admiral Foster," the Zarantine said, "I speak now as the interim leader of the Zarantine people. I formally request an immediate ceasefire and the opening of peace negotiations." Foster allowed himself a small smile, though he knew the challenges ahead were a long way to go. "Agreed, Admiral Krellax. Let's end this war and begin the work of rebuilding." As the ceasefire took hold and diplomats on both sides prepared for the monumental task of negotiating peace, Foster turned his attention to the myriad challenges that lay ahead. The war might be ending, but its consequences would reshape the galaxy for generations to come. Admiral Dylan Foster stood at the viewport of the UES Intrepid, watching as shuttles from various species converged on the neutral space station that would host the Peace Summit. The massive structure hung in space, its gleaming hull adorned with the flags and emblems of all participating factions. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" Captain Sarah Wright said, joining him at the window. Foster nodded. "A month ago, I wouldn't have believed this possible. Now we're on the brink of lasting peace or spectacular failure." As their shuttle docked with the station, Foster steeled himself for the challenges ahead. The delegation chamber buzzed with activity, filled with representatives from Earth, the Zarantine Empire, the Zarquin Confederation, and the Voltar hegemony. Admiral Krellax, his carapace gleaming under the chamber's lights, approached Foster. "Admiral," he said, mandibles clicking softly, "I hope we can find common ground here." "As do I," Foster replied, shaking the Zarentine's clawed hand, "but it won't be easy." The negotiations began in earnest, with Foster proposing a staged disarmament of the Zarentine military in exchange for economic aid and gradual reintegration. The chamber erupted into heated debate. "This is outrageous," thundered the Voltar representative, his gelatinous form quivering with indignation. "The Zarentine must be stripped of all military capability immediately." Krellax leaned forward, his compound eyes flashing. "And leave our worlds defenseless? We've seen how quickly allies can become enemies in this galaxy." Foster raised his hands, calling for calm. "We must find a balance. Immediate disarmament would destabilize the region, but we can't ignore the concerns of our coalition partners." As the Admiral worked to bridge the divides between factions, his comm unit buzzed discreetly. He excused himself, stepping into a private alcove to receive the encrypted transmission. "Sir," the voice of his intelligence chief crackled through the speaker, "we've uncovered a plot by Zarentine extremists. They're planning to detonate an antimatter bomb at the summit." Foster's expression resolute. "Do we have a location on the device?" "Not yet, but we've identified the leader, former Imperial Guard Commander Zalthor." "Understood. Activate our joint human-Zarquin team. They're to neutralize the threat without compromising the summit. We can't let this derail the peace process." Returning to the chamber, Foster fought to maintain his composure as the debates raged on. He caught glimpses of security personnel moving through the crowd, their movements casual but purposeful as they searched for the hidden threat. Dr. Marcus Wright took the floor, presenting his findings on the Zarentine genetic mutations. "We've developed a targeted gene therapy," he explained, bringing up holographic displays of complex molecular structures. "It could reverse the mutations and prevent future immunity to electromagnetic weapons." The chamber erupted once more. The Zarquin representative, her feathered crest filled, leaned forward. "This is a clear violation of galactic law. Genetic manipulation on this scale is forbidden." "It's not manipulation," Dr. Wright countered. "It's restoration. We're undoing the damage caused by our own weapons." As the ethical debate intensified, Foster's mind raced. The gene therapy could provide a safeguard against future Zarentine aggression, but at what cost to the fragile trust they were building? A message flashed across his datapad. "Threat neutralized. Zalthor in custody. Minimal collateral damage." Foster allowed himself a small sigh of relief, but he knew the dangers were nowhere near the end. Reports streamed in of unrest on former Zarentine-controlled worlds. He pulled Captain Sarah Wright aside during a recess. "I need you to lead a peacekeeping force," he said quietly. "Stabilize the outer regions before this power vacuum spirals out of control." Sarah nodded grimly. "I'll assemble a coalition team immediately. But sir, how am I supposed to maintain order without appearing as an occupying force?" "And that's the challenge, isn't it?" Foster replied. "You'll have to be part diplomat, part tactician. Build trust with local leaders, but be prepared for resistance." As Sarah departed to begin her mission, Foster turned his attention to another pressing matter. Vexilor, the Zarentine defector whose intelligence had been crucial throughout the war, approached him cautiously. "Admiral," Vexilor said, his voice low, "my position here is uncomfortable. Many of my people view me as a traitor, while your coalition allies regard me with suspicion." Foster studied the Zarentine for a moment. "Your knowledge and perspective will be invaluable in the reconstruction efforts," he said finally. "I'm appointing you as a special advisor to the post-war council. You'll be a bridge between our cultures." Vexler's posture relaxed slightly. "Thank you, Admiral. I'll do my best to serve both our interests." As the summit entered its final days, a new complication arose. Long-range scout ships had detected unusual energy signatures at the edge of known space, suggesting the presence of an advanced, unknown civilization. Foster presented the findings to the assembled delegates. "This discovery underscores the need for continued vigilance," he said, but it also presents an opportunity for cooperation. Dr. Aidan Kovacs stepped forward, activating a holographic display of a vast network of sensors and relay stations. I propose we develop a galactic early warning system, he explained. This network would allow us to detect and respond to any threats quickly and collectively. The idea gained traction among the delegates, seen as a compromise between disarmament and security. As the technical details were debated, Foster found himself pulled into countless side negotiations, balancing the demands of various factions. In a quiet moment, he stood alone in the observation dome, watching the stars. The weight of the galaxy seemed to rest on his shoulders. The peace agreement was tantalizingly close, but it required significant concessions from all parties. Foster thought of the protests erupting on Earth, the political opposition accusing him of overreach. He thought of the fragile trust being built with the Zarantine and the unknown threats lurking in the darkness of space. As he prepared to present the final terms of the agreement, Foster knew that his decisions here would shape the future of interstellar relations for generations to come. He took a deep breath, straightened his uniform, and headed back to the chamber where history awaited. The delegates fell silent as Foster took the podium, all eyes fixed on the admiral who had led them through war and now stood on the precipice of peace. He looked out at the assembled representatives, human, Zarantine, Zarquin, Voltar, and others, each carrying the hopes and fears of their people. "Ladies and gentlemen," Foster began, his voice steady and clear, "we stand at a crossroads. The choices we make here will determine whether we forge a lasting peace or sow the seeds of future conflict. I present to you the final terms of our agreement." "Agreement!" Foster paused, his eyes scanning the room. The tension was palpable, every being holding their breath in anticipation. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the summit facility, cutting through the silence like a knife. Panic erupted as delegates jumped to their feet, voices raised in confusion and fear. "What's happening?" demanded the Voltar representative, his gelatinous form rippling with agitation. Foster's comm unit buzzed urgently. He answered, his face growing grim as he listened to the report. "Understood. Initiate emergency protocols." He turned back to the assembly, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation. The unknown civilization we detected at the edge of known space has launched a massive invasion force. They're targeting both former Earth and Zarantine territories indiscriminately." The chamber erupted into pandemonium. Foster raised his hands, calling for order. "This is not the time for panic or division. We face a threat that endangers us all. I propose an immediate alliance between all present factions to face this new enemy." Admiral Krelax stepped forward, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "The Zarantine Empire stands with you, Admiral Foster. Our remaining fleet is at your disposal." One by one, the other delegates voiced their agreement. The Zarquin representative, her feathers now slicked back in a show of grit, nodded. "The Confederation will join this alliance." Foster turned to Captain Sarah Wright, who had rushed to his side. "Captain, I need you to coordinate our combined fleet. Work with Admiral Krelax and the other military leaders to establish a unified command structure." Sarah saluted crisply. "Understood, sir. I'll get our best tacticians on it immediately." "Dr. Kovacs," Foster called out, spotting the scientist in the crowd. "How soon can we implement that galactic early warning system you proposed?" Kovacs' fingers flew over his datapad. "We have a prototype ready for testing. With the resources of our new allies, we could have a basic network operational within 48 hours. "Make it happen," Foster ordered. "We'll need every advantage we can get." As the delegates dispersed to contact their governments and mobilize their forces, Foster strode to the command center that had been hastily set up in the summit facility. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the progress of the alien armada as it carved a path of destruction through the outer colonies. "Status report," Foster barked as he entered. A young lieutenant saluted. "Sir, the enemy fleet has already overwhelmed our outer defenses in the Arcturus and Sirius sectors. They're using some kind of energy weapon we've never seen before. Our shields are barely holding up against it." Foster studied the tactical display, his mind racing. What about the Project Sentinel AI ships? Are they deployed? Yes, sir, the lieutenant replied. They're currently engaged in the Procyon system. Initial reports show they're having success in analyzing the enemy's tactics and devising countermeasures. Foster nodded. Good. Have them transmit their findings to all Allied ships. We need to level the playing field as quickly as possible. Hours passed in a blur of tactical meetings, strategy sessions, and constant updates from the front lines. Foster fought to keep the alliance united as reports of devastating losses poured in. The Voltar hegemony threatened to withdraw their forces after losing a key homeworld, but Foster's impassioned plea for unity kept them in the fight. As the third day of the invasion dawned, Dr. Marcus Wright burst into the command center, his eyes wild with excitement. Admiral, we've made a breakthrough. Foster turned from the holographic display he'd been studying. What is it, Doctor? We've been analyzing the data from the destroyed colonies, Wright explained, pulling up complex chemical diagrams on a nearby screen. These invaders, they're not carbon-based life forms like us. They're silicon-based. The implications hit Foster like a thunderbolt. They're trying to terraform our worlds for colonization, he realized aloud. Wright nodded vigorously. Exactly. And now that we know this, we can develop targeted weapons and strategies. We're already working on a way to disrupt their silicon-based biology. Foster clasped the scientist's shoulder. Excellent work, Doctor. Get your team everything they need to fast-track this research. With this new information, the tide of battle slowly began to turn. The coalition forces, armed with weapons specifically designed to target the invaders' unique biology, started to push back the alien armada. The climax came as the invasion force approached the Sol system. Foster stood on the bridge of the UES Intrepid, now the flagship of the combined fleet. Beside him, Admiral Krellax chittered nervously. This is it, Foster said, his voice steady. All ships prepare for combat. Remember your training and trust in each other. Today we fight not just for our own worlds, but for the future of our entire galaxy. The battle erupted in a dazzling display of energy weapons and explosions. Foster's strategy, combining Voltar gravitational technology with modified Zarantine weapon systems, caught the alien flagship off guard. As a hole opened in the enemy's defenses, Foster made his decision. Prepare a boarding party, he ordered. Mixed team, humans, Zarantine, and Zarquin. We're going to end this war on their command deck. The boarding action was chaos incarnate. Foster led the charge, his pulse rifle spitting death as they fought their way through the alien ship's strange, crystalline corridors. Zarantine warriors provided heavy firepower, while Zarquin scouts used their natural agility to outflank the defenders. Finally, they breached the command center. Foster found himself face to face with the alien leader, a towering being of living crystal. For a moment, they stared at each other, two leaders with the fate of their people hanging in the balance. Foster lowered his weapon, a calculated risk. We don't want this war, he said, hoping the universal translator could convey the nuances of his words. We're willing to talk, to find a way for both our peoples to coexist. But make no mistake, we will fight to our last breath to defend our worlds. The alien commander studied Foster, its crystalline features unreadable. Then slowly, it made a gesture that the translator interpreted as agreement. The hostilities would cease, and diplomatic channels would be opened. As Foster relayed the news to the combined fleet, cheers erupted across every ship. The immediate threat had been averted, but the real work was just beginning. In the days that followed, Vexilor proved invaluable in establishing communication protocols with the silicon-based aliens. The former Zarantine defectors' experience in bridging cultural divides laid the groundwork for what promised to be a complex but vital diplomatic relationship. The galactic political landscape had been irrevocably altered. Former enemies now stood as steadfast allies, united by their shared struggle against annihilation. The peace agreement Foster had been about to present before the invasion was quickly ratified, with new provisions for mutual defense and scientific cooperation. As Foster oversaw the implementation of the expanded Galactic Early Warning System, he couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. The network of sensors and relay stations, now extending to the very edges of known space, stood as a testament to what could be achieved through cooperation. The stage was set for a new era of interstellar relations. As preparations began for the inauguration of the Galactic Concord on Earth, Foster found himself reflecting on the long, arduous journey that had brought them to this point. From humanity's initial declaration of war to this moment of unprecedented unity, the galaxy had been transformed. Foster straightened his uniform, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. The cosmos was vast and full of wonders, but also dangers. Yet for the first time, he felt truly optimistic about the future. United, they stood ready to face whatever the universe might throw at them next.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.